Hi folks, you're with Tassos today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how in white countries, or what were once nearly 100% white countries, in white countries, white people are being written out of popular entertainment, movies, TV shows, novels, product advertising. They're even being written out of their own history, for goodness sakes. And particularly straight white males are then being hit from all sides by NGO activism, anti-straight white male, anti-white activism, and also the mass migration, of course. But there isn't race and gender quotas in employment in white countries. Now, none of this is happening anywhere else. The Japanese aren't trying to write their Japanese out of their own history and their own entertainment. The Chinese definitely are not trying to write Chinese out of the entertainment. White people are uniformly depicted as evil. The Africans aren't writing black Africans out of the history. All countries are pursuing, other than white countries, all countries are pursuing quite a nationalistic policy, if you like, or attitude, or it's not even up for debate. Of course, in Japan, or you'd write about Japanese. Of course, in China, you'd write about Chinese, and so on. So white people are only being written out of their own history and their own culture in white countries. It's only happening in white countries. So now there's some Chinese going to Africa and that sort of thing, but the reality is it's only white countries that are on a path of cultural and historical self-destruction. So let's have a let's have a look at that and see how it's happening and what are the incentives and what are the push and pull factors that are causing this to happen. And bear in mind, our own politicians, mostly straight white males, are not only allowing this to happen, they are supporting it. They are supporting the writing of that white people are being written out of their own history and their own culture, their own adverts, and so on. So this is, and it's a fairly recent sort of phenomenon. But just coming out, I picked up on something, and I had a few notes to do a vid about something sort of, I guess, a bit similar. But I saw History Debunks vid about Kenneth Branagh, who's mentioned, as indeed have other movie makers and producers and documentary makers, have mentioned that if you don't play the globalist game, if you don't write white people out of the script and out of the screenplay, you must write black and brown and Asian characters into the script of the movie, no matter when it was. I mean, if it's set in a white country, an all white country, particularly if it was all white, then you must replace a number of the characters, or invent characters. It doesn't really matter, but replace the white characters with black, brown, and so on characters, and write the white characters out of the thing. Now it's quite absurd because there are places around, even when I was a young man traveling around on business, places in England where you wouldn't see a black or brown face at all. It was, I mean, maybe, just maybe, you'd see a Chinese guy in the Chinese restaurant. Maybe there'd be that. But that aside, you wouldn't see anyone that wasn't locally born white. And that was kind of how it was. But now in England and elsewhere, France, Germany, all over the place, Sweden, they're inserting black and brown characters like it was always that way, which of course it wasn't. So it's an outrageous piece of duplicity and deceit, but it's something that our politicians are supporting and the globalists are making do it. So let's have a close look why. Now, Kenneth Branagh and other directors have said that if you want funding to make a movie these days, you have to go along with the globalist script. The globalist script is replace white people with black and brown people. And turn women in the 1920s were definitely and completely dominating all the men and this sort of thing. Create this fantastic illusory fantasia of a world that's supposed to have existed back then in order to justify the outrageous carry-on that the globalists are pushing on us today. So they're trying to sort of backdate the madness and so that today doesn't look so mad because, hey, it's always been crazy. So, but it goes. I mean, just in documentary making, it's the same. I came across talking to a documentary maker one day, and he was saying that this is a similar thing, that really you can't get funding for a documentary unless you're going to be you have to insert globalist talking points in it. You have to be anti-male, particularly anti-male, and you have to be anti-white and pro black and brown and this sort of thing. You sort of have to do it, but particularly you have to make gender relations at the forefront of an animal documentary, for fuck's sake. So and he was saying about a scene where these a baby goat was being attacked by a wolf or a fox or something or other, and only at the last minute the herd bull, the male, came along and chased the predator off, and they were instructed to delete that scene because it made males look positive. That was a positive comment on males, and so they were told to delete that scene. That's how petty, pathetically petty, these globalists and their foot soldier flunkies are, that you have to delete a scene like that, which would have been a good action scene and a good accurate depiction of how things are in the wild. But no, it made men look good or males look good, so it has to come out. And the way that the scripting was used to falsely depict a scene and falsely depict certain scenes and to falsely represent what really goes on in the wild. For example, the male leopard has a large territory, and he leaves the territory to the female with the infant because that means there's more resources for them to live on. So he's not sort of taking resources away that could be used to make the procreation successful, given they're genetically disposed to at least achieve that. But instead, it's depicted in the documentaries and he abandons the mother. He doesn't pay child support. He's a Nazi. So the depiction is quite absurd. But that level of deceit and duplicity is happening everywhere. But we see it in product adverts now. Now, there are so few product advertising adverts. I saw one a few days ago that had an all-white family in it. And it's got to be the first one I've seen in months. I mean, you just don't see them anymore. And the depiction of mixed race marriages, which again is a fantasy world that they're pushing on us. The mixed race marriages in Australia, and these are people, brown and black people who've been born in Australia, and still the mixed race marriage is about 2%. A little bit higher in some, like Filipinos, it's a little bit higher and that sort of thing. But it's overall it's 2%. And Chinese that came to Australia in the 1850s are still marrying Chinese people, still bringing brides in and husbands in from China. Same in India. People that left India in 1860 are still sending back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides. That's how thick these people are. So the idea that it's white racism is utterly absurd. So, but this depiction of every couple that you see on TV, and typically it's the black guy, the white woman. So obviously they're targeting women and trying to subliminally get to them and say, hey, why don't you marry a black guy or a brown guy? So, but there's very little of it. There's some, but very, very little of it. And again, even with people who've been born here, I've gone to a suburb where there's maybe 15% white now. 25 years ago it was 100% white, but 15% white now. And so these people these people even when they're born, they were born 20 plus years ago in Australia. Even kids dating from high school, that sort of stuff, they still are just dating people from their own genetic pool. They're not outside. Same with kids that are born here. If you go on a train sort of any time after, around when schools come out, and even the private schools, the people or the kids all cluster in their groups, the Chinese group here, the Indian group there, the the Filipino group over there, and another group somewhere else, and that type of thing. There's the black guys all together. There's very little crossover, and yet they're forced to sit next to each, white next to black, and so on. They mix them up at school to try and force, but it still doesn't work. They still go with their genetic groups. So whatever they're doing, the government's pouring vast resources into this, and it's still not really working. The young people that are running around sort of telling us that mass migration is a wonderful, good thing. They're not hanging around the white kids or the white girls. They're not hanging around with black and brown people at all. So again, it's not working. And it would take, I would think, well over another 100 years before they get anything like the integration that they're thinking of, and that's that's 4 generations away. So, but having a look at TV shows, it's the same. You can't make a TV show now without either promoting globalist, as in it's got to be pro-mass migration, pro-black people, pro-empowerment of feminist women, and that sort of thing. Pro-gay lesbian, or if you don't go those things, it must be virulently anti-white male. That's also acceptable, but it has to be one or the other, and often both. And there's a TV show that I was looking at, and I looked because I knew it would be a globalist bit of absolute crap nonsense. So I had a look at it, and sure enough, the white guys are all depicted in caricature, incredibly evil. They're shown in dark light and all this thing, and the most negative. They're all straight white males, and they're all Nazis, fascist Nazis. But all the brown and black people are very cultured, very well spoken, morally superior, far morally superior to any of the white people. And they're smarter as well, and much more measured and sensible. And no, I've never met people like that. I mean, if you maybe 1 or 2 in my whole lifetime. So again, it's this ridiculous fantasy of this world they're pushing on us. It just simply doesn't exist and has never existed. All white people bad, everyone else all good. I mean, what a joke. But it followed just the same bullshit talking point script, bad whitey, good black brown, bad male, good woman, this sort of thing. So it's just the normal globalist talking points. And what's interesting too, nearly every program that really is pushing this and pushing it hard, I don't have to. I can already write the bio of the people that are doing the script. I don't have to go online and find it. They're primarily Jewish, primarily female, primarily lesbian, and all of them they're outliers. If it's a male writer that's white, then they'll be gay, or a black writer. If it's a black female, she'll be a lesbian as well. So it comes from a very small pool, a very angry, hate whitey no matter what. Everything Whitey ever did was bad, evil, Nazi, fascist, and this is what comes across. But the reality is that and just on another point, just while I think of it, a good former colleague and good friend of mine who was quite a successful novelist, and he went to put in his 99th novel, and he had cred and a reputation. And they just no, you have to change the lead characters to be black or lesbian, or you've got to put in globalist anti-white male talking points into the story. Otherwise, we're just not going to publish it. So really, you can get a book published, a TV show made, or a movie made, or an advert put out on TV or online or anything like that. You can't do any of those things unless you're pushing globalist talking points, because you just can't get the money to do it. They won't give you the money to do it. They won't give you the publishing. Yet absolute rubbish written by a black author saying all whites are evil and bad will get published without a second's thought, even though it's absolute crap. Something that you wouldn't even let a middle school kid put out. If they put out an essay, you'd flunk it, and yet they're going out as history books. Look at some of the stuff that in England, that David Olusoga and Rennie Edo Lodge have done. I mean, really, it's junior high school level and riddled with inaccuracies. And it can't be that they don't know. They're being paid to push anti-white propaganda. But if you put a factual, absolutely crystal factual white history thing up, you won't get a publisher to touch it. You just won't get it because there's the word is out. You won't be given the money to do this unless you're pushing the globalist message. And the same goes for companies bidding for government contracts in the West. You won't get it. You won't get the contract unless you agree to bring in a certain proportion of workers, black, brown workers. You must materially and fundamentally assist the mass migration process into the West, or you won't get a government contract. And that's even starting to seep down to the subcontract level, where that's being pushed on you, that you have to have a certain amount of black lesbians on staff, otherwise you won't even get a small contract now. So this is the thing now. Now, when I sort of wondered about this, and if you extend this out, because Western governments are pursuing policies, the globalist policies that the local population do not want and would not vote for. These people purport to represent us, the citizens of the West, but they don't. They represent the globalist interest. But how? I don't know how far this goes. What happens if the big end, the big international finance machine cabal says to a country, whether it be like Australia or Canada or Britain, well, if you don't do what we want, there'll be a run on the pound, and we're not going to subsidise. All these countries are running financial deficits. They're borrowing more money. They're running at a loss, if you like, and the cabal could easily turn off the tap if they wanted to make a run on the currency. So your currency won't be worth shit. Whatever debt you owe will be worth 10 times what it was yesterday. You'll be fucked. You'll be screwed, and you'll be hung. You'll be hung from the nearest lamppost by angry citizens. And so now, I don't doubt they've got that capacity, given that the threats are made all over the place in every other facet of information flow, propaganda, construction, and everything else. You will not get money to do anything unless you do what we, the globalists, want. And you've got to assume it's happening to national governments. I believe that it's probably going that far that they're able to say to prime ministers and presidents, do what we want or else. And so they're going along. So they're selling out tomorrow for the benefit of today. And I think that is happening. It probably is happening. And what a tragedy. What a tragedy. What a useless bunch of morons. If all the Western countries got together and said, no, look, we're not doing this, screw you, the globalists would be fucked. But they're all too useless and gutless, and pretty much every sort of again, the globalists own all the politicians in the Western world. So there probably aren't very many that even would disagree with it. They probably want to destroy Western society. But there you go. You've been attached to us today. Your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.